Good afternoon, all. We'll start up in about a minute or two. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to our online open house for Nicollet Mall and Downtown Transit Project. Happy you're able to join us on this really cold day. And if you have kids at home, if they weren't in school today, an extra shout out. Thank you for being here. We'll start with introductions for the presenters, and then we will go through a number of slides and have an open, we will respond to Q&A at the end. So I will start. I'm Kathleen Mayell. I work for the city of Minneapolis. I'm a transportation planning manager in our public works department, and I've been working on this project in partnership with Kyle from Metro Transit, and I will turn it to Kyle to introduce himself.
Thanks, Kathleen. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle O'Donnell Burrows. I work at Metro Transit. I'm a planning manager for arterial BRT here at Metro Transit. And as Kathleen noted, Metro Transit has been working closely with the city on this work for some time now.
And our third presenter today is Shanna from the city. I'll pass it off to Shanna.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shanna Sether. I am a city planner in community planning and economic development. Glad you could join us today.
So a couple quick things, orientation to the open house. So we will be recording this open house and posting it to our website. Today's presentation, as well as materials, can be found on our project website, which is listed here, as well as a QR code. And with that, we will have one more slide of kind of background logistics. So there'll be participation via Mentimeter during the presentation. If you have not used that tool, don't worry, we will walk you through it. You go to a website, you enter a code, and there will be a question that we ask related to material that we presented. And some of the questions will show then live results, and you'll just see those right on your screen. We will be including full results of what we hear in our phase 2 engagement summary, which we will post to our project website. We'll run through these slides, and then we will have a question and answer session. You can submit questions at any time during the presentation. So if you see something on a slide and it, you don't have to wait till the end to submit the question, but we will be answering them at that point. If you have any technical issues in terms of getting to be a part of this presentation or anything of that nature, you can connect with Amy Barnstorff. Her email is at the bottom of this page. It's amy.barnstorff@minneapolismn.gov. And just a screenshot here as well of how you are able to ask a question. So those are the logistics. And then just a note too, these are re-envisionment. They're like basically the same boards at the open houses that we will have in person. So we're just going to talk through these boards that we have in detail. And there's about 15 of them with varying levels of information. Big picture, the city is planning to move transit off of Nicollet Mall. We are working to do that to both improve downtown transit as well as increase downtown vibrancy. There have been a number of efforts that we've been working on related to this, and we've developed 3 options for transit service in partnership with Metro Transit about where transit can move to. The goal is to improve transit service downtown and create a more flexible and dynamic Nicollet Mall. We've been working on this for a while, since last summer. And in the fall of 2024, we did our first round of engagement where we shared general information about the 3 transit options and gathered input. During this round of engagement, which started last month and will continue through the early part of February, we are sharing findings, presenting trade-offs and more technical data on the 3 different transit options, and continuing to gather input. We're planning on making a spring decision and another round of engagement then where we share the preferred transit option and continue to gather input, and then finalizing or formalizing that decision in the summer. We would also then have a corridor that we would be bringing through a more typical project development process in terms of design and refinement. And then we anticipate that the earliest move of transit off Nicollet Mall onto a new corridor or corridors would be in 2026. To dig into a little bit on the project goals, in terms of increasing downtown vibrancy, we have goals around improving walking, rolling, and biking and transit, both to and within downtown, that we are increasing greening to support a comfortable experience, that we're improving curb space for activation and access, that we're maintaining parking and delivery access to buildings on whichever of these new corridors move forward, and that we are improving perceived and real safety on the street. In terms of the downtown transit goal of improving downtown transit, we want to improve the speed and reliability of downtown transit service, provide convenient, safe, and comfortable access to destinations. We want to provide waiting experiences that are safe, comfortable, and clean, provide a transit experience that is simple and easy to use, and that we are acknowledging where we've been these last several years with COVID and a change of commuting patterns and whatnot, that we're planning for growth of the local, the express, and the future bus rapid transit service in downtown, and that whatever changes happen here will be able to accommodate and support success for that future growth. Overall, we want to make transit as good or better than it is on Nicollet Mall today. And so these are the goals that we will be measuring, and we are measuring our different transit options against, and we will share more details about that with you all and see what other considerations you all have. I'll just note on several of our pages, we have a QR code that we have a survey that you are also please encouraged to take. This is different than the survey we did in the fall. If you did do a survey then as well. And those results will be similarly part of our phase 2 engagement summary that will be posted later in February on our website. So getting to be focusing in a little bit more on the impetus of this project. So the city is leading this, and the reason here is there's been recent work, both internal and external to the city, of really bringing forth the idea of pedestrianizing Nicollet Mall into a signature, pedestrian street for the downtown. In June of 2023, the mayor, he had created the Vibrant Downtown Storefronts Work Group in 2022, and then a report was released in 2023 that really looked at looking at Nicollet Mall as a pedestrian street. And there have been various other efforts since. There was the Downtown Next report through the Minneapolis Foundation that again kind of is growing the momentum around this. Last fall, the city published the Downtown Action Plan, which again further developing this concept of Nicollet Mall as a pedestrian space. And one of the key strategies in that is it's listed here, elevate Nicollet Mall to a community-centered, pedestrianized Main Street. So part of that vision is moving transit. On the left is a picture of our Transportation Action Plan. This is a policy document passed in 2020, and that really informs our transportation work across all sorts of streets, all sorts of angles throughout the whole city for the years 2020 to 2030. There's a lot about transit and transit investments and improvements within the Transportation Action Plan, and notably there is a strategy around increasing the speed and reliability of transit and a specific action about improving transit speed and reliability throughout downtown with a focus on Nicollet Mall, Marquette, and 2nd Avenues first. And the rationale for those 3 corridors are that those are such important transit spines in our downtown, and there are so many people who rely on the important transit service there. And there's a lot of room for improvement there, which we'll get into a little bit here in a few slides. So this is a map of our current transit system, and I am going to pass it off to Kyle, our expert over at Metro Transit, to walk us through how transit operates downtown today to orient you all.
Thanks, Kathleen. So what we're looking at here today, just to kind of help us get centered with where we are, where is Nicollet Mall in relation to the rest of downtown. So we are looking at sort of our large downtown system map. And of course, as we know, downtown Minneapolis is really a major destination and a center for transit downtown and throughout the city of Minneapolis and really regionally. It's served by many local routes and many express routes, as well as 2 light rail lines, the blue line and the green line. And those routes, for the most part, stick within several kind of principal corridors, transit corridors through downtown. They run east and west, so this is kind of from the right to the left of your screen approximately. And then several others run north to south through downtown, again sort of approximately. So from the bottom of your screen is south, up to the top of your screen is towards the north. And just to situate us here, identifying those, starting off running east-west, the first key corridor is Washington Avenue, where the running east-west through downtown, sort of near the Mississippi River. So that's the home of routes 3, 7, and Route 22. Principally, so several high-frequency routes providing service through downtown there. The next main corridor running east-west through downtown is on 5th Street, and that's the the route of the blue line and the green line, so our 2 light rail lines in our region, again providing high-frequency service through downtown. You can see on this map the station locations for the blue line and green line identified as those kind of white dots along that alignment there. And then moving a couple of blocks further south, the other principal east-west corridor through downtown is 7th Street and 8th Street, operating as a one-way pair. 7th Street sort of moving to the northwest, and 8th Street moving to the southeast there. Those are home to the C line and D line. So those are 2 of our arterial bus rapid transit lines in our region. They operate in mixed traffic principally, but provide fast, frequent, all-day service similar to the rest of the metro network, as well as home to routes 5, parts of the Route 22, and parts of the Route 9. Then there are really 3 principal north-south corridors in downtown as well, starting with the Marquette and 2nd Express corridor. These operate as a one-way pair. Most of the express services coming into downtown Minneapolis use the Mark II corridor, and buses operate through here using a sort of skip-stop operation and stop groups for those of you who are familiar with that express corridor. And the Metro Orange line also uses the Mark II corridor as well. More in the center of downtown and kind of prominently featured on this map here is Nicollet Mall. And of course, as Kathleen has already mentioned, Nicollet Mall is home to 5 bus routes. It's one of the busiest transit corridors in our region, and obviously the subject of our conversation here today. And then moving further west in downtown, we have Hennepin Avenue, which is really the 2nd principal local local bus corridor in downtown. That's home principally to the Route 4 and 6 and the 61, and will be the future alignment of the Metro E line opening later this year in December of 2025, upgrading the Route 6. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Kathleen.
Thanks, Kyle. So Nicollet Mall is a major destination for transit riders, for people, for retail. There are some transit challenges, which we'll get into, certainly. But, it has evolved over the decades. It still remains a major concentration of our retail destinations downtown, as well as a lot of different office, residential, and restaurant destinations. So Nicollet Mall is the busiest transit corridor in the city and really the upper Midwest. As Kyle said, there's nearly 12,000 people that get on and off the bus on Nicollet Mall every weekday. There are the 5 routes that we just saw on a map, the routes 10, 11, 17, 18, and 25. And over 650 buses per day use this corridor. The average speed on Nicollet Mall for a bus is 5 miles per hour. And there are different reasons for this. One of them is the 10-mile-per-hour speed limit. Also, the way the street is configured, there's just one lane of buses going north and one lane going south. And so buses cannot pass each other if they are waiting for a stop or what have you. So every time, there's loading and unloading, that type of thing, all the buses behind. And because it is such a busy corridor, that really does add up to a fair amount of delay. So when we look at this bottom left chart, we see passenger delay score on the x-axis here, and Nicollet Mall is really an outlier. All those blue dots represent different corridors and that Metro Transit operates transit routes on. So this one has the most passenger delay, which is measured in hours per mile. Really an outlier in the system. Our y-axis is our transportation equity priority score. That's a score that the city of Minneapolis has developed through our racial equity framework for transportation. And we look at a lot of different demographic characteristics and how we measure equity from a kind of census tract driven demographic profile of different areas in the city. So we have a fairly high transportation equity priority score and an outlier when it comes to passenger delay, which shows there's a lot of room for making those improvements, aligning with that policy vision through the Transportation Action Plan to improve transit speed and reliability through downtown. This clock chart on the left, we can see that buses are moving under 50% of the time that they are on Nicollet Mall. And so the green is showing when the percent of time buses are moving, red is stopped at a signal, that yellowish color is the boarding, and then orange is just other. So that's a big part of what we're dealing with here on Nicollet Mall. We have the city and Metro Transit have worked together, and we've implemented some speed and reliability improvements on Nicollet Mall, and we've evaluated others and not proceeded with them due to various reasons. So some of the things that we have undertaken in the past have been some focused on transit operations. So things like eliminating mid-route change of operators on Nicollet Mall, adjusting schedules to avoid what is called bus bunching. That's like buses catching up with the bus that's in front of them, if that's delayed. Promoting the go-to card the go-to card usage so that it's quicker for people to board when they're getting on the bus. Ad campaigns to encourage riders to exit off the back of the bus. Again, improving the amount of time or shortening the amount of time where people are getting on and off the bus. And also an ad campaign about not chasing the bus and just waiting for the next one. Things that haven't been made improvements to date, all door boarding and off-board fare payment. These are improvements that are planned with the future BRT. So the Route 18 is planned to become the F line in the future, and that would be implemented with that new service. So, but it doesn't exist yet. And then also signal adjustments. So folks may have heard about transit signal priority being used in different corridors throughout the city to really give transit buses the chance to like make it through a green light, hold the green a little bit, or have the green turn for them first, or that type of thing. It's a challenge downtown where we're dealing with a lot of cross traffic for people walking, biking, and transit riders as well as drivers. And so because there's a high density of people walking too, it's trickier to do that type of signal adjustment on a corridor like Nicollet Mall. We do a signal adjustments for the light rail downtown, and that really forms the spine of a lot of our signal operations in the downtown core. We did hear a lot about that in phase 1 of engagement, and so just wanted to share that we have previously looked at that, but that is not something that we have implemented on Nicollet Mall. So in all 3, which we'll get into the details of the transit, of the corridors we're considering moving transit to, 2 of the corridors, the routes 11 and 25, would plan to move to Hennepin Avenue. And it's really, so the focus of the 10, 17, and 18 and where those local routes go are kind of where the decision point is. So as Kyle mentioned, Hennepin carries 3 routes today, the 4, 6, and the 61. The 6 will turn into the E-line in 2025, which is that bus rapid transit service. And so these 2 corridors, the 11 and these 2 routes, the 11 and 25, would move over to Hennepin. You can see what the ridership on Hennepin is today. There's an average speed of 7 miles per hour right now, weekday ridership of 4,500, 342 buses per day. We are gonna open this up for Mentimeter, but just a couple quick things before we do. So Hennepin is certainly a very important north-south or at a skew, but big picture north-south corridor downtown. We will be looking at transit priority treatments and evaluating different treatments on Hennepin Avenue as well, and we'll begin that work this year. That is something that was also outlined in our transportation action plan and is something we will be pursuing. So what that means in terms of what will happen on Hennepin Avenue will be informed by that evaluation, but that will be coming. Kyle, are there other things you wanted to say on the slide before we open up to Menti?
Thanks, Kathleen. I'll just note, kind of expanding a little bit on the header of this slide, really that the moving the 11 and the 25 over to Hennepin Avenue, and then looking at the remaining routes as part of where they would go on one of these 3 options that are currently on Nicollet Mall. It's really due to how the these routes access downtown and sort of how the street grid and the bridges interact with each other. The 11 in particular aligns very well with continuing through downtown on Hennepin Avenue and then coming back through downtown on 11th and 12th Street to access 3rd Avenue. So it's sort of providing that balanced local coverage throughout downtown, as well as minimizing the number of turns that are needed to take to move through downtown. So that's an important element of some of the rationale for that recommendation with this piece. And I'll turn it back over to you, Kathleen, for the Menti.
Thanks, Kyle. So if folks are able to open up either another tab on their browser or another device and type in menti.com, that's menti.com, it will bring you up to a page and it'll say, do you have a code to enter? And if you type into there 3271 3101, there will be these 2 questions about what concerns do you have about moving routes 11 and 25 to Hennepin Avenue, if any. So we'll spend 2 minutes to let people answer that question. And then the second question, are there related improvements you'd like to see on Hennepin Avenue given the move of routes 11 and 25 and all 3 options? So if you have any questions, you can certainly type those in the chat. We can do our best to help navigate you through that. We will give people a couple minutes on this first question, and then we will transition to the second question. Okay, I'll give folks another 45 seconds to finish up this first question. And if you're already done, thanks for your patience. All right, we'll flip to the next question. So if you just refresh your screen, or it might say advance to the next question, we'll have 2 minutes to have you all share your thoughts on related improvements you might like to see on Hennepin Ave, given the move of the Route 11 and 25. All right, about 30 more seconds and then we'll move on. All right, thank you all for sharing those thoughts with us. We are now going to focus on what we heard in our fall engagement and share with you more details there. All of this information is online also. I'll scroll in a bit too so people can see some of this information is a bit small. So what we did during phase 1 is we had a survey where we got over 1,000 people responding. We were out on the bus talking to people. We did different pop-ups on Nicollet Mall. We had a public open house at the Central Library. We had presentations to our pedestrian and bicycle advisory committees and so on. And so we're going to share some of the highlights now from the online survey. And all right. So we asked folks about their experiences on Nicollet Mall today and giving feedback on the different corridor options, and that really helped inform how we developed a trade-off matrix, which we are sharing here in a few slides, and we're also welcome and want to hear your thoughts on how you think we've talked about those trade-offs. But we heard from folks, for those who are transit riders, what's most important to you? The highest answer was feeling safe, followed by bus service that's more likely to be on time, followed by easy transfers to connecting buses or rail. That was the number one, feeling safe was the number one answer. Related to Nicollet Mall, what's most important to you? Again, feeling safe was ranked top. More activities and things to do on a daily basis, close behind, and more places to sit and hang out. We asked folks how the different transit options would impact access to destinations, and across all 3 of the options, the number one answer was about the distance to destinations and taking them further from their destination. And then in terms of information on transfers, folks talked about how it would be more difficult to transfer to other routes. I'll note that we didn't have as much information as we do today on transfers, and so we will be sharing more info on what it would look like to transfer between the different corridors and the different transit downtown. In terms of who responded, nearly 80% were Minneapolis residents. You can see the age demographic breakdown here, biggest cohort being folks 18 to 24. I'll just, so note that. 17% identified as disabled. Highest household income group was just over 30%, identifying in that 50 to 100,000 range. And about, what is that, about a third of the folks rode the bus on the mall either every day, almost every day, or a few times a week. Another about 20% a few times a year. So that is who we heard from. And then you can see also the racial breakdown here. So we were able to capture, transit riders and non-transit riders. Wasn't fully representative of Minneapolis population, but you can see those breakdowns here. Oops, excuse me. So I try to move up here. So I'll go through the top themes we heard. So there were a couple open-ended survey questions, and we categorized all of those by different themes and tracked how frequently they were mentioned. There's more detail on this online on our website if you want to dig in more and see all the different raw, feedback we got from people. But the top theme we heard about was already mentioned, but distance to destinations being super important, and that people are concerned with moving transit further away from key destinations on Nicollet Mall. There was excitement about Nicollet being a pedestrian street in downtown, and so there was a lot of excitement around that. At the same hand, people were familiar and liked the way Nicollet Mall operated today, and they kind of knew where to go. It's familiar, change is hard, that type of comment. There was the acknowledgement that bus riders do help Nicollet Mall. There's a lot of foot traffic, and that contributes to Nicollet Mall vibrancy, and there was concern about removing that. There was also a concern noted that the focus should be on the presence of negative activity on Nicollet Mall, and that regardless of whether it has to do with transit or not, like deal with that as opposed to focusing on transit. And then there was a concern related to that destination one about the lack of service and retail destinations on the 3 corridors we're looking at, so Marquette, 2nd and 3rd Avenue. Acknowledgement that Nicollet Mall needs more retail for its continued vibrancy. There was excitement around improving transit speed and reliability in downtown, and a lot of support for efforts focused on that. And big picture, people talked a lot about safety and wanting to see safety improvements downtown broadly. So again, all this information is on the website if you want to dig in more detail, and there's a lot more as well in our engagement summary from phase 1. So as noted, transfers were a big deal that people talked about. And so as that was a top theme, we wanted to spend a little bit of time showing how what we are presenting in options 1, 2, and 3 differs from what's on Nicollet Mall in terms of transfers today. And I will again pass this off to Kyle to walk us through this. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Kathleen. And if you could maybe zoom us to each quadrant, starting with the Nicollet Mall today, and then we'll just go down option 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, sorry. Hold on. I don't know why that's not working. Oh my goodness. Ooh. There we go. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Kathleen. Okay, so starting with how transfers work today. So Nicollet Mall routes, you can see here again, this is a similar map to what we've looked at previously, where Nicollet Mall is here, the multiple colors, the local routes operating on Nicollet Mall. And then you can see the east-west principal transfer locations for both the blue line and the green line, and then on 7th Street and 8th Street for the C line and D line. So starting up top on the blue line and green line at 5th Street, folks today get either on or off the bus at Nicollet Mall and 5th Street, and then walk or roll to the light rail platform, which takes up about the full block between Nicollet Mall and Marquette Avenue. So it's a relatively short walk connected right to that station there. Similarly for 7th and 8th Streets, these are a little bit further depending on which direction you're going on 7th and 8th Street. Stations are located on 7th Street at Nicollet Mall and at 8th Street on Nicollet Mall in both directions. So fairly close proximity to the local bus stops there as well. Could we slide down to option 1? What we're looking at here is something that's a little bit more complex. You can see the local bus, or sorry, the stations as dots indicating approximately where they would be under each of these options, and then the dotted box sort of encapsulates the transfer area for folks, the expected transfer area for folks who are making connections between the east-west services and the north-south services. So starting at 5th Street, obviously that's the blue line, green line station on Nicollet Mall and Marquette. Between those two blocks, for folks transferring from Marquette Avenue, so in this case going southbound, it remains that close connection right on just the other side of the light rail platform in this case. For folks going northbound on 2nd Avenue on the local services, there is about a 1-block walk added here along 5th Street back over to that platform. Or if folks prefer, they can walk about 1.5 blocks, walk or roll 1.5 blocks over to the government center platform on the other side of 3rd Avenue. For the C and D lines, one of the things that is part of this work is looking at the addition of a BRT platform on 7th and 8th Street to reduce those walk and roll, the transfer distances. So we're looking at the existing stations on 7th and 8th Streets and Nicollet, and then the next ones being at between 3rd and 4th, looking at adding additional stations around Marquette and 2nd Avenue to reduce that transfer impact there. Obviously, we're still, depending on which direction folks are going, if you're going from, say, northbound to westbound, there's a little bit of a walk, depending on which direction you're going. Two-way pair, or a one-way pair, transferring to a one-way pair, there always adds a little bit of complexity there, but that additional station helps mitigate that. Option 2. So looking at option 2, where the future BRT and local service would all be on Marquette Avenue in both directions. Again, that additional C and D line station between 7th and 8th, between Marquette and 2nd, helps to mitigate some of the additional distance between Nicollet Mall and these future station locations on Marquette Avenue. So in this case, northbound and southbound services are both on Marquette Avenue in this scenario, and then those additional station locations would be planned to be in that same location between Nicollet Mall and Marquette, and then on the other side between Marquette and 2nd Avenue. And then down to option 3. And then option 3, where the local and future BRT service would move over to 3rd Avenue. Here there are existing stations at 3rd Avenue for both the Blue Line and the Green Line on 5th Street, as well as the C Line and D Line and that local service there on 7th and 8th Street. So transfer locations would be, again, fairly proximate to each other in this case without making any changes to the east-west station locations. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Kyle. All right, now we have one slide per option, and I'll share. I'm going to scroll in again, assuming I can do that again, and talk to each of the three in detail. We also have a couple questions about each of the three as well. So as described, the routes 11 and 25 would use Hennepin Avenue, and the routes 10, 17, 18, including future bus rapid transit, would use Marquette and 2nd. This is the one that looks kind of most similar to today. Orange Line and the 33 express routes would stay on Marquette and 2nd, and other downtown buses would stay where they are. So if you look at the street changes, you would use the existing lane configuration. So you'd have 2 lanes of transit in one direction and 2 lanes of general purpose in the other direction, which is sometimes used for parking, as is now. We'd have partial reconstruction on the side of the street that has the transit to accommodate future BRT stations as a part of the F line. We would consolidate the express bus stop groups and rearrange those to allow room for the BRT stations along each of the corridors. And so you can see here, this is preliminary concept layout of what that would look like. So we'd have the red bus lanes, you'd install the bus rapid transit stations, and then there's be a consolidation. These black Metro Transit symbols are where you'd have the express service. And you'd have the southbound service on Marquette, northbound transit service on 2nd Avenue. So what would this do in terms of transit speed and reliability? Going from Washington to 12th, this is just travel time on the bus. It's not waiting for the bus. It's not if you have to walk longer to the bus or transfer, it's none of that. It's just the trip time, which is something we can measure, would be about 6 minutes. Right now, it's currently about 10. On Nicollet. So this is saving about 4 minutes for transit riders on that part of their journey. To share some of the benefits and challenges, benefit was that trip time I just talked about. The 2 lanes of all-day bus-only lanes let buses pass one another, and so that helps with reliability. You don't get stuck behind a bus that is potentially dealing with a passenger that needs a little more time to get on or off the bus or what have you. There are no, right now there's buses get routed off of Nicollet a lot for event closures. And so there's a lot of detouring that pretty much goes away. The existing sidewalk widths were designed for transit service on those, the west side of Marquette, the east side of 2nd. And so that provides a comfortable, width of sidewalk for transit passengers. And then the parking, loading, and delivery that can happen on the other non-transit side of the street remains relatively the same as today and allows for those different activities to happen along that stretch of both of those corridors. A few of the challenges, it's complex, right? You have transit service that, if you're getting into downtown or leaving downtown, you might have to be on a different corridor. And so just remembering, and getting used to that type of split service is one thing. Transfers that Kyle walked us through are a bit more complex, even with that added BRT station. The access to destinations, there are fewer destinations to get to within a 5-minute walk compared to Nicollet Mall, and then just a change in terms of the limited active storefronts and pedestrian activities as compared to Nicollet Mall. So we have, again, if you can go back to Menti and answer, there's 3 different questions. One is, how well do you think this option will increase downtown vibrancy in a scale of not at all to very well, similar about improving downtown transit, and then just kind of overarching, how much do you like or dislike this option? And so again, it's the same menti.com, and it's a same code, 32713101. And we'll give 2 minutes for folks to put in their time there. We'll give it about another 30 seconds. Just so folks know, we are receiving questions and we will be answering those at the end. So thank you for those. All right, thank you all for that. And you should be able to see on your screen how that's shaking out for all the different participants. So we will move into option 2. All right, oops, sorry. My apologies, sometimes the same thing does something different. My goodness. Here we go. Thanks for bearing with. Okay, so option 2 continues to use Marquette and 2nd Avenue. But what it does is it reorganizes the way transit is used. So all the local and BRT service would be on Marquette, shown here, the 10, 17, 18, future F line, future Nicollet BRT. And the express service, the 33 express routes would all be consolidated onto 2nd Avenue. The orange line would also stay on Marquette Avenue. Other downtown service remains the same. So what this looks like is changing the way the lanes operate on both Marquette and 2nd Avenue from 2 lanes of transit one direction and 2 lanes of general purpose to 1 lane of transit in each direction and 1 lane of general purpose traffic in each direction. So what this means is that you get your curbside bus only corridor here. Behind the curb work would be done on both 2nd and Marquette. There'd be the bus stop accommodations on 2nd Avenue, the side of the street that was not designed originally for the buses, and then a partial reconstruction of Marquette Avenue to add future BRT stations on both sides of the street there. So you can see down here what that looks like. Big picture, you've got your BRT and local service along Marquette, north and southbound, and then your express service here on 2nd. Similar to option 1, average travel time is about 6 minutes from Washington to 12th, down from 10. So it's really similar transit speed improvements. Oops, I'm sorry, did that go to 3? Yes, okay. It's the same for 3rd too, spoiler alert. All of them are anticipated to have about a 6-minute transit travel time compared to the 10 minutes on Nicollet right now. So big picture, some of the benefits: ease of access to Nicollet Mall. It's got the shortest walk for the local routes and the future BRT to Nicollet Mall of all 3 of the options. There's that more consistent or familiar transit routing where both directions are on the same street. The travel time, which we talked about, and then compared to what exists on Nicollet Mall, and we actually did receive a question about this too, so maybe I'll just address that as I'm doing this. Right now in Nicollet Mall, Buses aren't swerving around other buses on Nicollet Mall because they would be going into a lane of traffic that is designed to go the opposite direction. So here, like up here, if there was a bus where this bus lane says, you could go into the same direction of traffic and not be going against traffic and pass a bus if there was some sort of added time that that bus was stopped at a station for some reason. So compared to what exists on Nicollet Mall, the local and the BRT service would be more reliable than what exists on Nicollet. In terms of some of the challenges, again, that fewer destinations within that 5-minute walk compared to Nicollet, eyes on the street, same as before, parking removal. So this would require parking removal on Marquette entirely and large or significant reductions on 2nd Avenue. Also on 2nd Avenue, this would likely result in decreased speed reliability for the express route because of kind of the inverse of what we were talking about with space to pass. So before, express was operating in a 2 transit lane scenario, right? And so express service could always go into this other transit lane here to get around a stop bus. In this scenario, they're going into mixed traffic. So that would be, you know, if there was a bus here, and that might be slower compared to what they have now. And then on both corridors, just given all the things we're trying to fit in, limited space for wider sidewalks or left turn lanes, there's no left turn lanes proposed in either of these corridors, or those full width shelters on the side of the street that wasn't originally designed for the transit. So we've got the same 3 questions on Menti about option 2, if you wouldn't mind going back to your Menti and telling us what you think of those 3. We'll give about, 2 minutes total. All right, we'll give it just another 15, 20 seconds. Okay, I'm going to move us on to option 3. Same thing with 11 and 25. All local and BRT service moves to 3rd. Orange and Express stay on Marquette and 2nd, so no changes there. And what we do here is we take a general purpose traffic lane in each direction and convert it into a transit only lane on the outside edge. Left turns remain, and then there's 1 lane of traffic in each direction, and I'm hopeful we can hope. My apologies on that. I'm not going to scroll in, but you can see here how that looks across several blocks, the opposing left turn lanes here, and so on, the BRT stations. Notably also the on-street painted bollard protected, like those white plastic bollard bikeway that is currently on each side of the street would be consolidated onto the east side of the street, 2-way protected bikeway that you can see up here in this top rendering. And this would require a full reconstruction of 3rd Avenue to accommodate all these changes. Similar travel time benefits here, that 6 minutes from 12th to Washington. And so some of the major benefits here, it shortens, that travel time like we talked about, and the reliability in terms of being able to pass buses that might be stopped. Challenges, longest walk to Nicollet of the 3 options, similar challenge regarding access to destinations and eyes on the street. Despite reconstructing the street, it's a pretty narrow right of way. It results in some narrower than desired bikeway widths and shelter widths along this corridor to fit in everything. So with that, we have the Mentimeter for the last time on the 3 transit options. We have a couple other Mentimeter questions, but in terms of the transit options, if you could please fill that out, we'll give folks a minute and a half, 2 minutes or so. All right, about 10 more seconds. All right, thank you for that. All right, we are now going to spend a little time deep diving a bit more into some of the trade-offs, and I'll walk through these. We've got a slide for each, and there's both downtown vibrancy goals, as well as transit goals. All of this information, again, is online. I know it's a lot, but just, I think, conceptually wanting to show those original project goals that we showed are reflected here in A through E. So I'll run through one, for example. So the goal about improving walking, rolling, biking, and transit to and within downtown, there's 3 different ways we're looking at that. Dedicated space for transit, ensuring a comfortable walking and rolling environment, and upgrading existing bike facilities. Under this scenario, like option 1, existing transit would be moved to one of the 3 option corridors. So not on Nicollet. Under Nicollet, under option 1, pedestrian use is the same as it is on Nicollet, but improvements to comfort in terms of not competing with the bus traffic and whatnot. So those are anticipated. And then bicycle use would remain on Nicollet Mall. So some improvements to comfort anticipated there in terms of not navigating that space with the buses. So in option 1, we have ranked this as meeting project goal because we're providing those full-time transit priority lanes. In terms of the comfort, in terms of walking and rolling, there is space for people to walk and roll comfortably. And then in option 1 under the bicycle facility, so this does not include bike facilities on Marquette or 2nd Avenues. I did see a comment in the questions about can bikes ride on Marquette and 2nd? And yes, Ben's from our traffic group, you can jump onto if you want to. Yes, you know, there wouldn't be dedicated facilities, but certainly bikes can ride with mixed traffic. And then this would preserve an opportunity to upgrade that 3rd Avenue bikeway versus via some other project not related to this in the future. So I'm going to walk through this slide. I'm just doing a time check. In terms of greening, which our metric is providing room for planting and trees, the long-term, a future Nicollet would have those increased opportunities for planting and trees. And option 1 maintains what exists today. So felt that met project goals. In terms of improving curb space for activation and access, do we have space available for events and activities like food trucks? Nicollet, we'd have increased spaces for that. And then in option 1, curb uses are for transit priority lanes on the west side and the east side of 2nd Avenue. there'd be flexibility on those opposite sides for different uses if desired. In terms of maintaining parking and delivery, the first metric is maintaining the existing parking, loading, and delivering. That's not applicable for Nicollet Mall. There is no parking. In option 1, we maintain that parking and loading on the east side of Marquette and west side of 2nd. And in terms of preserving existing driveways that provide parking and delivery access to the buildings, not applicable on Nicollet Mall. And in option 1, we're maintaining all those driveways. In terms of perceived and real safety, providing short crossing distances for pedestrians at intersections. There'd be no adjustments on Nicollet Mall, so that'd be equivalent to today. And in terms of option 1, we would be shortening crossing distance at intersections where there are transit station locations and improving that safety. Providing left turn lanes where left turns are permitted, not applicable on Nicollet. And then under option 1, it's the same as today, so there'd be no dedicated left turn lanes. And so there would be a second lane, however, for those vehicles passing a left turn lane on the direction that general purpose traffic is going. Perceived security really varies by personal opinion, though we know just in terms of the different types of storefronts and activity on option 1. And we've heard from folks that it may potentially feel less safe for people on that corridor. Option 1, there's also all the, excuse me. There we go. Okay, so that was option 1, downtown vibrancy. Option 2 with downtown vibrancy, so it's all the same stuff on the left, it's just this option 2 column. We'd still have full-time transit priority lanes on Marquette, and we'd add those to 2nd Avenue. Ensuring a comfortable walking environment. We feel like there would be adequate space for people to walk and roll comfortably. Upgraded existing bike facilities, same as option 1. It doesn't include anything on Marquette or 2nd, but preserves that opportunity on 3rd. In terms of room for planting and trees, there'd be increased space for that on Marquette, but there would be some impacts to existing planting and trees on 2nd. Curb space for events and activities. The curb would really on Marquette only be used for transit, and there'd be some potential weekend opportunities on 2nd Avenue. Maintaining the parking and loading delivery, be all removal of parking on Marquette and daytime parking on 2nd Avenue, potentially retaining some of that weekend parking on 2nd Ave. We would maintain all driveways, shorten crossing distance again, same as in option 1, no dedicated left turn, same as in option 1. And that same limited storefront and pet activity as an option 1. Option 3, same metrics here. Full-time transit lanes provided. We've already talked about that sidewalk widths being less than ideal for downtown streets, and we would require easements on private property to meet that full scope of design there. The bikeway, while it would be upgraded to behind the curb, it doesn't meet the recommended width for downtown, given all the different pieces that we are trying to fit into that street. So that's why that was rated yellow. In terms of plantings, there would be some increased space, but also some impacts to existing trees. Curb space is really for transit priority only, so there wouldn't be an opportunity for any additional curbside events. There would be a removal of most of the parking along 3rd Avenue. There's very limited right now, but it would remove most of that. And there would actually be a little bit retained near City Hall. This slide, I think we need to adjust. And then preserving existing driveways, those are all maintained. Crossing distance remains relatively similar today. And then the potential, we do have left turns at the intersections that go left. We would need to secure those easements in order to do that, so that's not guaranteed. And then again, the same perceived security caveat for all the other ones remains equal. So bear with me, we've got the same thing for the transit goals, and I'll run through these. And so in terms of fast, reliable service on our north-south corridors, speed and reliability of the local and BRT service, We know that that is a major issue right now on Nicollet Mall, and we are planning for BRT to follow either, it was planned for Nicollet Mall, but would follow whatever corridor we move to. So we assume under option 1 that all-day bus only lanes with lanes for passing will provide fast and reliable service for transit riders. The speed and reliability of express service, nothing on Nicollet changes. There was likely to be less impact, likely to be less speed and reliability as we described in option, there's less impact on the express route. Speed and reliability is really similar to today. And then in terms of competition between buses and other curbside uses, there's none on Nicollet. And right now, under option 1, we'd be using the existing lanes, so we're not adding any new competition between those uses. In terms of providing safe, convenient, comfortable access to destinations, clearly Nicollet Mall provides the shortest walk. Option 1 retains a short walk to most common destinations. And then in terms of convenient transit access for people and jobs in downtown, there's slightly reduced for option 1 compared to Nicollet Mall and other options. Providing walking experience that's safe, comfortable, and clean. So one metric we're looking at is the waiting environment on the corridor and at those local and BRT stations. And Nicollet right now, transit riders are waiting on a street with a lot of other activity throughout the day, probably most eyes on the street that there are in these options. And under option 1, transit riders would be waiting on a street with some other activity. But the transit service is split too, so it's not quite as all together. Adequate space for local and BRT stops. There's space on Nicollet Mall. There's also space within option 1. Safe and comfortable waiting environment on corridor and at express bus stops. Nicollet doesn't change anything about the express service. Similar with option 1. Adequate space for express stop. Nicollet doesn't change anything. Space for standard size shelters matches existing conditions under option 1. Then looking at a transit experience that's simple and easy to use. First metric about convenient transferring and those connections. Nicollet Mall has that short walk to light rail and BRT stations. We're including Nicollet today as a point of reference for folks. Option 1 requires that additional station on 7th and 8th to minimize the walk to the BRT stations, and walk to connections remains longer than the other options. The simplicity or legibility of the transit service, right now people are used to what's out there, and option 1 is a more complicated routing because of that split corridor. Consistency and availability of transit service. Nicollet Mall right now, transit service is regularly detoured to accommodate planned events and unplanned detours on Nicollet Mall. We see this as a plus for option 1. Transit service no longer being detoured to accommodate planned events. There'd still be, there's always unplanned detours like lane closures and so on that would not disrupt the transit routing because they'd be able to at least move into the other lane as opposed to having to move to a different corridor. And then lastly, planning for growth of local express and future BRT. So ability to accommodate planned BRT and local service, that could be accommodated on Nicollet and it can be accommodated on option 1. And then the same for accommodating express service growth. Nicollet, there's no change. And then under option 1, the total number of express bus trips could be accommodated lightly reduced, but we do believe that the streets can accommodate that anticipated express service growth that we would anticipate over the future years. Okay, so option 2, looking at transit service, we see all-day bus-only lanes with passing, fast and reliable surface as a positive. We've talked about the express service likely to be slower as a negative here. All of these options require trade-offs, right? And so we're just trying to help point out the different ones. Competition between buses and other curbside uses. We do think that there would be under option 2 because we're taking up the curbside for transit priority. There's gonna be some of that competing uses of people trying to stop in the bus lane and so on, that would require enforcement to maintain effectiveness. In terms of convenient access, short walk from the local and BRT to the most common destinations for Nicollet Mall, providing access to the most people and jobs within a short walk compared to the other options. In terms of a walking experience, we see option 2 as, again, waiting on the street with some activity. There'll be several local and BRT stations would require narrower shelters, could still be accommodated certainly, but just not the standard width shelter. Safe and comfortable waiting environment. So that doesn't change for the express service, be similar to today. Adequate space for express stops. We've talked about those standard shelters on the west side of 2nd Avenue. They'd either need to be narrower or a sidewalk would need to be expanded to accommodate those. In terms of transfer points, there's the additional station needed at 7th and 8th. In terms of simplicity and legibility of the transit service, see this as a plus in terms of the simple routing. You know, if your service is either on Marquette or 2nd, there's the same detouring or lack of detouring anticipated under this option. And we see that there would be the ability to accommodate future local and BRT service in the same type of statement here in terms of planned express service. We anticipate that we can accommodate what we think will come, but it might not be quite as great as the capacity that exists today. And then lastly, option 3. So there is all-day bus-only lanes, which you see as a positive. Express service doesn't change. There would be that competition with the new all-day bus-only streets in terms of the curbside use along 3rd. In terms of access to destinations, this one requires the longest walk, which is seen as a negative here and provides access to fewer people and jobs within a short walk compared to other options. In terms of the walking experience, transit riders are on a street with limited other uses, and there are some stations that will require narrower shelters. Waiting experience does not change for express service or express stops, so those are seen as green here. And then in terms of a transit experience, that's simple and easy to use, good transferability, we retain simple routing through downtown, and transit service no longer detoured for transit, for events on Nicollet, so those are all shown as green. And then planning for future growth, we see that would be green in terms of accommodating the local and BRT and not changing express service ability to expand. So that is, thanks for bearing with me through that. A lot of information there, but hopefully that kind of helps show how there are trade-offs, positive and negative for each of the 3 options, and as we walk through these. So we know that folks are also really interested in what's happening in Nicollet Mall, which is the big why behind this, and that work is certainly happening, it's certainly related and happening in tandem. I'm going to pass it off to Shanna from CPED to walk us through the next 2 slides.
Thanks very much, Kathleen. So we don't have to imagine too much what would a pedestrianized Nicollet Mall look like, because we do this. So frequently buses are detoured off of Nicollet Mall now to accommodate events like some of those that you see before you. Our friends at Downtown Improvement District provided these activations as examples of common festivals and street activations that we see take place in whole or in part along Nicollet Mall. And Holidazzle was just there this winter as well. Nicollet Mall is a unique corridor in that it is already closed to most vehicle traffic. And so it doesn't compete with parking garages that need access or other driveways or things like that. So closing Nicollet Mall allows, or moving transit off of Nicollet Mall allows for pedestrianization for some of the activities that you see right now, because it doesn't have those same access constraints as many of the other streets do downtown. Kathleen, could you go to the next slide, please? So back in October, the mayor introduced the Downtown Action Plan, which furthers the concept that Nicollet Mall is a pedestrianized space. So the strategy really is to create a community-centered pedestrianized Main Street as a place for activation, placemaking, programming, beautification, and really kind of thinking about infrastructure needs in the long term to allow for a place for community to connect and have fun and to play. So the action plan includes action steps specific to this strategy. So it's really around creating a tactical plan in the interim, for placemaking and for programming to really create a draw for Nicollet Mall for pedestrians. We know that improvements can't stop just at the street, however. So there also will be strategies and more collaborations with public and private partnerships on storefront activation and how folks use the Skyway and wayfinding opportunities. And hopefully some more investments where we see some of the vacant storefronts be activated uses in the future. We also know that there is a desire from folks, and we've heard this, for more infrastructure, more seating, more green space, drinking fountains, things of that nature. Certainly we acknowledge that all of these things are very desirable. And we also acknowledge that Nicollet Mall was just reconstructed a handful of years ago. The Downtown Action Plan sets out several success metrics, looking for new activations, reduced vacancies, an improved economic landscape, improved tax revenue, and seeing new developments and new investments downtown. And then the Downtown Action Plan also lists several partners. The city cannot alone do the activation. So certainly looking forward to ongoing partnerships, with our partners within the city and then also outside as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Shanna. So we're gonna not pause and wait for people to do this. We want to get to our questions that folks have been asking, but this Menti is open. And if you have other comments related to sharing your vision for downtown transit or your vision for Nicollet Mall, please do submit them on Menti. You can submit multiple answers, just keep submitting, it's open, and you can, again, all those answers will be part of our phase 2 summary. So with that, I will share that we have 2 more open houses, tomorrow in person at the Central Library and on next Tuesday at the IDS Crystal Court over the lunch hour. Please take the survey and I will pass it off to Mike, from Metro Transit, who's gonna lead us through questions. And if we don't get to every question, we will publish answers to the ones we did not get. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kathleen, Kyle, and Shanna for your presentation. We did get around 15 questions through the course of the presentation. I've done my best to sort of organize and prioritize them. And the first question, I'll just kick off here. Why were none of the 3 options asked about keeping transit on Nicollet Mall? So why wasn't that an option, a 4th option that we could choose from?
Thanks, Mike, and for the question. The kind of premise of this project is that we are moving transit from the mall in order to create a pedestrian place. So we want to be asking questions about, given that is a fundamental part of this project, where do you think the transit should move? So in order to do the different things that Shanna was just talking about, that is why we did not include keeping transit on Nicollet Mall as one of the options.
All right, thank you, Kathleen. Next question, I think also for you, Kathleen. How was the timeline for this project determined? This person feels like it was rushed to them, especially sort of how long these transportation projects take.
Thanks. So we've been working, over the last year plus on what the different, where transit could go downtown, what it would mean for transit. And so what we're trying to get to here, right, is a decision about a corridor where transit would go. And then we would work through kind of the design details and the, regular project development part of a more typical project. So how was everything, I guess, is relative. There's a push and pull, right, in terms of how long things take and the kind of energy around wanting to pedestrianize Nicollet Mall. So we started talking about this in 2023 and, working through all the pieces and getting to a 2026 as the earliest implementation, that's several years certainly. And while that may seem rushed on one hand, and the other hand, from other perspective, that seems to be a long time, right? So I mean, the project timeline is taking into consideration a variety of factors in terms of trying to make a decision, move forward, really kind of take the evolving momentum that's growing for the Nicollet Mall work and really using that and being able to accommodate that pedestrianization, as early kind of as we can, knowing that we need to be very thoughtful and that there needs to be improvements made for transit to be as good or better as it is on Nicollet Mall today for all the folks that are using transit service on the mall.
All right, thank you, Kathleen. We received a few questions about transit signal priority, or TSP, and I'll sort of combine them into one question. Would Hennepin face the same challenges as TSP on Nicollet Mall might? And then just, again, general questions, and maybe, Kathleen, you answered some of these when you were talking about TSP, but why can't Nicollet Mall have TSP? Prioritizing transit over cars is maybe a Kyle question, or Ben. I will kind of let it float out there for a minute.
Ben, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this. So good afternoon, Ben Brasser from Minneapolis Public Works Traffic and Parking Services. A little more into the specifics of transit signal priority. Downtown and Nicollet, and also related to Hennepin, it's similar conditions on both of them. One of the more one of the distinctions to make is some of our choices in the city of Minneapolis about transit signal priority are operational choices. Some of them are just realities of the environment. And so when it comes to a downtown environment, like a high pedestrian downtown environment, and also a high transit frequency downtown environment, there's a lot more consistency that can that happens with frequent bus arrivals every cycle, using like on a Nicollet Mall or a high transit occupancy street, with buses arriving frequently at all points in the signal cycle, as well as in all directions, crossing the north-south direction and the east-west direction. There's a lot less of flexibility and ability to be able to move time around and assign time to different routes in different directions. Similarly, with where that time has to come from in the signal operations, is also providing transit priority limits the time available to a pedestrian who's trying to cross that route as well. And so not only is it a matter of balancing priorities of transit vehicles versus cars, but it's also balancing priorities of transit versus pedestrian walk time as well. And then to the part about the relationship, or the similarities or differences between transit signal priority on Hennepin Avenue versus Nicollet Mall, the answer to that is, for the most part, that the same conditions do exist on Hennepin Avenue. There are the same transit routes crossing Hennepin Avenue, and the part closest to the downtown core has the same kind of pedestrian activity as well. So for the most part, in the same comparable areas where Hennepin and Nicollet are, it's similar conditions on both of those streets.
All right, thank you, Ben, for that. Early in the presentation, we received several questions about are there other streets that could be looked at than Nicollet Mall? And then what is the plan for Nicollet Mall after buses are moved? I'd like to think that Shannon was able to address those questions near the end there when you updated folks on the CPED plans. So let me know in the chat if that's not the case. But one of those questions also included a sub question about funding and having to pay to redo Nicollet Mall again. Just sort of a note that both Hennepin and Nicollet Mall had been recently redone. So maybe a general question about the budget and the funding for this project.
So the plan is not to take Nicollet Mall and totally redo it again, right? But use the kind of the design that was implemented in 2017 as the platform for what happens for the next phase of Nicollet Mall's life. So there's not like a major infrastructure project anticipated in the near term with Nicollet Mall. There would be an investment made on a transit corridor. Part of that investment, Metro Transit is investing in bus rapid transit throughout the metro area and has 2 BRT investments coming to a north-south corridor in Minneapolis. The F line is more specific than a future unnamed yet Nicollet BRT, which exists in their longer term planning documents. So there are investments being made in transit. There are investments that would be made in terms of accessibility to in these different corridors. So some of these improvements are improvements that we would want to have installed at the same time as wherever transit goes, because it's really important that we have accessible, right? The most current ADA accessible standards for sidewalk ramps and so on along the corridor where transit would be. So there would be investments that would need to be and would be wanted to be made along with moving transit to one of these corridors.
All right, and Kathleen, that kind of segues into a related question. Given that we'd be shifting a few routes to Hennepin Avenue, there's a question of possible transit improvements on Hennepin, specifically bus lanes. Is that being considered?
So we're going to be looking at different transit priority treatments on Hennepin Avenue starting this year. We're starting the work of evaluating Hennepin Avenue from both a, we evaluate the new design we have, the transit priority, and see if there are different investments that would make sense and, be a good thing to do in concert with this project or around it, right? So we haven't done that work yet, but we are planning on it. It's something that, again, was also outlined in our transportation action plan and as part of our ongoing partnership that we do with Metro Transit in terms of looking at transit priority investments on different corridors throughout the city. For example, the Hennepin-Lyndale area by Loring Park and the Walker, that's an example of a project that we did that is, something that we've done outside of a different capital project. There are different types of transit priority treatments. So transit priority lanes are one, right? Those red lanes. There's queue jump, which lets transit go first through an intersection and get back into traffic if they pulled out. There's different, signal priority we've been talking a lot about today. So looking at the different options and seeing if any of them would be viable and make sense on Hennepin is something we will be looking at.
All right. Well, Kathleen and others, I will just do a time check here. It is 1:30. We do have a few more questions, which we could either answer now or reply to in writing. What's the preference?
Well, I guess we can't assume that people can stay. We know you've given a big chunk of your day already. We appreciate that. We appreciate the questions. So we will, we can post the questions that we got that we weren't able to answer online as a part of the materials. And we appreciate you engaging with us and asking the questions and hope to hear more from you all. And thanks again for your time today.
Thanks, everyone.